She slipped a note into a stranger's hand, not knowing the mafia boss would read it that night. The high desert wind has teeth tonight. It comes down from the Sandias, sharp and cold, scraping across Albuquerque's rail yards district. It makes the neon signs flicker, casting jittery light on the empty streets, red, blue, a sick motel green. This is the graveyard shift, my shift. My name is Lina Hart. I am 24 years old, and I live on stale coffee and adrenaline fumes. I work the night desk at the 911 call center. I am the voice you hear when your world is ending. The problem is, I haven't had a full night's sleep since a call that came in 3 months ago. A whisper, a struggle, then a deadline. It plays over and over behind my eyes. Insomnia is my co-pilot. In this city, there are shadows that wear uniforms. They call themselves the Mesa Ridge Task Group, publicly. They are an interagency force cleaning up the streets, privately. I know what they are. I have heard the calls that get buried, the ones that never make the report. They are an extortion network, and they feed on the vulnerable. They feed on women like me. It started small, a black Toyota 4Runner, the same one, parked across from my apartment building every morning when I get home at dawn. Its windows are tinted so dark they look like holes in the daylight. Then came the text message, from a number I did not recognize, just 5 words. Keep your mouth shut. I am a 911 dispatcher. Keeping my mouth shut is the opposite of my job. I checked my bank account last week. There was a new charge, $45, deducted by a company I had never heard of, High Noon Civic Services. The memo line read neighborhood security fee. I live in a walk-up with a broken lock on the front door. There is no security. It was a threat I was meant to pay for. I might have stayed quiet. I might have just moved apartments, changed my number, and tried to disappear. I am small. I know how to look invisible, but they did not stop with me. My cousin, Ray, is 19. She works the late shift at the Cactus Bloom Diner, slinging coffee and pie to truckers and insomniacs. She is all the family I have left. Last Tuesday, 2 men from Mesa Ridge came in. They did not order food. They flashed badges, asked for her papers, ran her ID just to make her sweat. They told her it was a dangerous neighborhood to be working so late. They told her she could probably use some protection. Ray came home shaking, and the fear in her eyes burned away my own. That was when I decided I would not run. I would fight. But you cannot fight a shadow network with a 911 call. They are the system. The opportunity came dressed in a borrowed uniform. An email assigned me to special event dispatch for the annual Desert Lights Gala. It was a high-dollar fundraiser held right here in the refurbished rail yards, a place where the city's elite came to drink expensive wine and bid on abstract art. My job was simple: sit in a discreet command post, handle the event's private emergency line, be invisible. I walked through the main hall, the headset feeling heavy on my ears. The place was dripping with money. Glass sculptures twisted toward the ceiling, catching the light. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in glittering dresses laughed, their voices echoing off the exposed brick. They lived in a different city than I did. And then I saw him. He was standing apart from the crowd, near a massive sculpture of blue, hand-blown glass. He was not looking at the art. He was looking at the people, watching them the way a hawk watches a field. He must have been 36, maybe 37. His suit was dark, perfect, and looked more like armor than clothing. There was a stillness about him, a weight. Power did not just surround him, it emanated from him. I saw the event coordinator approach him, bowing almost, calling him Mr. Valenti. Nico Valente, I knew the name. The Valente Trust, on paper. They were philanthropists and specialists in high-end art logistics. Their trucks moved priceless things across the Southwest. On the street, the name meant something else. It meant family. It meant control. It meant the kind of power that did not need a badge. This was my chance, a terrible, desperate, insane chance. My hands were shaking. I tore a corner from a briefing sheet in my pocket. I found a pen. My training kicked in. The need for clear, concise information. No emotion, just the facts. I wrote, "If you read this, please help me. They are Mesa Ridge." I folded the small piece of paper twice, then twice again, until it was a tiny, dense square. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break my headset. I started walking. I moved through the crowd, my borrowed blazer blending in. He did not look up as I approached. He was still watching the room. I kept my head down, moving past him as if heading for the exit. My hand brushed his. For 1/2 second, my fingers pressed the folded note into his palm. His hand did not move, did not flinch, but his fingers closed around it instantly. A reflex. It was done. I did not run. I walked. I walked straight past him, past the glittering crowd and toward the exit sign, never looking back. I felt his eyes on my back every single step of the way. From the shadow of the doorway, I watched. He stood there for another 10 seconds, motionless. Then slowly, he brought his hand up. He shielded the note with his other hand, using his body to block the view from the room. He unfolded the paper. I watched his eyes. They were dark, and as they scanned the words, they became absolutely flat, cold. The change was terrifying. He read the 4 lines, then slowly lifted his head, his gaze sweeping the room, looking not for me, but for something else. And he found it. Across the hall, standing near the catering entrance, were 2 men. They were not in tuxedos. They wore plain, ill-fitting gray suits. They were not looking at Nico Valente. They were looking right at me, the men from Mesa Ridge. Nico Valente folded the note. He did not put it in his pocket. He just held it. His eyes met mine across the cavernous room. He knew. The high desert wind howled outside, rattling the steel-framed windows. A storm was here, and I had just handed a match to the man who controlled the gasoline. My shift ended at midnight. The adrenaline from the gala, from the note, had evaporated, leaving behind the familiar, gritty exhaustion. The drive back to my apartment at Sandstone Court was automatic. I parked in my usual spot, the one under the flickering fluorescent light that was supposed to make the carport feel safer. It never did. I grabbed my bag, walked up the 2 flights of concrete stairs. The air was still, carrying the smell of cold dust and distant juniper. I put my key in the lock of apartment 2B. It did not need the key. The door pushed open an inch under the pressure. I froze. My training screamed. A door ajar is not an invitation. It is an alarm. I did not move. I listened. I tasted the air. Was that cigarette smoke I never smoked? I strained to hear a floorboard creak, a breath, a television. There was nothing. Just a silence that was too heavy. My hand came away from the doorknob. My 911 instincts took over. You do not enter. You do not call out. You do not make yourself a target. You retreat. You observe. You call for backup. But who could I call? The police? The thought was bitter. The men in the gray suits at the gala flashed in my mind. They were the police. I backed away, silent, my soft-soled shoes making no sound on the walkway. I got down the stairs, moving fast, my heart a cold knot in my chest. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove 2 blocks away before I parked again, this time in the deep shadow of a closed-down laundromat. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I called Ray. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Lena, what's wrong? Is it morning?" "No. Listen to me. Ray, do not go home. Go to the all-night coffee shop on Central. Wait for me there. Do not talk to anyone. Do you understand me?" The sleep evaporated from her voice. "Lena, you're scaring me. What happened?" "Just go. Please, I'll be there. I promise." I hung up before she could ask more questions. I sat in the darkness of my car, the engine off. They had been in my apartment. They had waited for me. The black 4Runner, the neighborhood security fee. It was an escalation. They were done being subtle. My phone vibrated in my hand, a different buzz, a text from an unknown number. "Meet me on the Desert Lights rooftop parking, 12:40 a.m. Bring the paper." It was signed NV. 12:40 a.m. It was 12:23. He meant now. He meant the note I had given him. A cold dread washed over me, immediately replaced by something else, a sliver of hope. I was sitting in the dark, locked out of my own home by a corrupt task force. My only family hiding in a coffee shop. I had two choices. I could keep running, let them push me and Ray out of the city, out of our lives, until we had nothing left. Or I could go to that rooftop. Trust the system or trust the mafia. The system was a boot on my neck. The choice was as clear and harsh as the sodium streetlights overhead. I started the car. The rail yards district was abandoned now. The party was over. The string lights were off. I drove up the concrete ramp of the parking garage, the tires squealing in the silence. The rooftop was empty, a flat expanse of concrete under a black sky, lit only by the red and blue neon glow of the district below. And him, Nico Valente, stood near the edge, looking out over the city. He was not a silhouette. The ambient light caught the sharp lines of his suit, the darkness of his hair. He turned as my car door closed. The wind whipped at my hair, pulling the heat from my body. I walked toward him. I did not know what to say. He saved me the trouble. He held out his hand. In it was the tiny, folded square of paper I had given him. I did not take it. "You just touched a board not meant for solo players. Lena Hart," he said. His voice was calm, low, no echo in the open air. He knew my name. Of course he did. "They were in my apartment tonight," I said. My voice was shaking, and I hated it. I forced it steady. The door was open. They were waiting for me. "Mesa Ridge," he stated. It was not a question. "Yes. They've been following me for weeks. A black Toyota 4Runner. They sent me a text telling me to keep my mouth shut. They started stealing money from my bank account, $45. They call it a security fee." I took a breath. "They threatened my cousin, Ray. She's 19. She's all I have. That's why I did not need to finish. He looked at the note in his hand, then back at me. His eyes were dissecting me. He was not looking at a woman in trouble. He was looking at a puzzle, or perhaps a new piece in his own game. He was building a schematic, just as I did with my calls. Where are the players? What is the threat? What is the objective? "You're a dispatcher," he said. "You're trained to route problems to the people who can fix them. You think I can fix this?" "I think you're the only person they're afraid of," I said. Nico Valente was silent for a long moment. He tucked the note into his own breast pocket. "I do not make promises about morals. Lena, I do not deal in justice. I deal in stability, and this Mesa Ridge. They are a destabilizing element." He took a step closer, and he was taller than I realized, and the sheer presence of him was overwhelming. "You did the right thing by not going inside. You did the right thing by calling your cousin. You are smart, but you are finished being smart alone." He looked past me, toward the ramp. "From now on, you go home in my car." It was not a request. It was not an offer. It was a command, stated as simple fact, and for the first time in months, the crushing weight on my chest eased. A command felt, strangely, like protection. A dark sedan I had not noticed before pulled up. A man got out of the driver's seat. He was built like a refrigerator, with a calm, watchful face and a scar that cut through one eyebrow. "This is Jonah Pike," and Nico said. "He will take you to your cousin, and then he will take you both somewhere safe. Go now." I hesitated. "What about you?" "I am not the one they're hunting tonight." He turned back to the city skyline. I was dismissed. I got into the back of the sedan. Jonah Pike did not speak, just pulled out of the garage with impossible smoothness. We picked up Ray from the coffee shop. She tumbled into the back seat, her eyes wide, full of questions I could not answer. "Lena, who is this? What is happening?" "That car, the black one, it's here." I looked out the back window. My blood ran cold. 2 blocks behind us, pacing us, was the Toyota 4Runner. They had followed me from my apartment. They had followed me to Ray. "Jonah," I said, my voice tight. "I see him," Jonah said. He did not speed up. He did not swerve. He just tapped his steering wheel twice. Amateurs. He made a right turn onto a quiet street. The forerunner sped up to close the gap, to make the same turn. And then they came, like ghosts. 2 large motorcycles materialized from a dark alley. They did not have their headlights on. They flanking the forerunner, one on each side, hemming it in. They were so close, the forerunner was forced to slow down, to brake hard to avoid hitting them. Jonah Pike made another turn. The motorcycles stayed with the forerunner, blocking it, a perfect professional. Silent piece of choreography. When I looked back again, they were all gone. We drove for 10 minutes, into a part of town I did not know, full of high-end, discreet hotels. We pulled into the underground parking garage of the Sunset Kiva. It was clean, silent and empty, smelling of new concrete. Jonah parked in a reserved spot. Nico Valente was already there, leaning against a pillar. He walked over as I got out of the car. He handed me a small, heavy, old-fashioned cell phone, a burner. "Ray is safe here," he said. "They have a suite for you. You are not to leave it. When you feel a direct threat, when your instincts tell you the door is open, you press 1. That is my number. Only then." I took the phone. The metal was cold. "And what do I do now?" "Now," he said, "you get some sleep. You are no good to me exhausted." He turned and walked away. Jonah Pike gestured for us to follow him to an elevator. I looked back at Nico Valente's retreating form. I had just crossed a line. It was invisible, but it was real. I had spent my entire adult life trusting the system, wearing a headset that was its lifeline. Tonight, I had abandoned the uniform and put my faith in a stranger who commanded shadows and stopped threats without a sound. From the deepest corner of the garage, a place I had not even registered, there was a tiny glint of light, a sound, no louder than an insect. Click! A camera flash, instantly suppressed. Someone was in the shadows, someone was watching, and they had just taken a picture of me, standing with Nico Valente. The game had a new player, and Mesa Ridge knew exactly who it was. I started living in a state of suspended animation. The suite at the Sunset Kiva was beautiful, all soft neutrals and high thread count sheets, but it was a cage. Ray paced it like a panther, bored and terrified, jumping every time the ice machine rumbled down the hall. I went to work, but not from my own car. At 5:45 each evening, a large, anonymous white box truck would pull into the hotel's service entrance. It said Vesper Arts Logistics on the side, in tasteful, boring blue lettering. The driver was always Jonah Pike. I would slip out a side door and he would let me into the passenger seat. We never spoke. I would ride to within 3 blocks of the call center, hidden in plain sight, just another part of Albuquerque's evening traffic. I was cargo, valuable, fragile, and completely controlled. The black forerunner was nowhere to be seen, but the feeling of being watched never left me. "This guy at the diner is giving me the creeps. Lena," Ray said one afternoon, flipping through a magazine she'd already read 6 times. The hotel curtains were drawn, as always. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been cross-referencing old dispatch logs with the High Noon Civic Services name. "What guy?" "He says his name is Professor Calder, an older guy, tweed jacket, smells like pipe tobacco. Nice enough at first, but he keeps asking weird questions." A cold prickle went up my spine. "What kind of questions?" "Like, about my family. He asked who my guardian was. I told him I'm 19. I do not need a guardian, and he just smiled. He asked if I was close with my cousin. He said he was a sociologist, just studying the local community ties. He's been in 3 times this week, and he always sits in my section." "Ray, you do not talk to him again. If you see him, you tell your manager you're sick, and you go to the back. You understand me?" "Lena, he's just an old man." "No," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "He's not. He's a spotter. He's a lure. He's Mesa Ridge." Her face went pale. The reality of the cage we were in suddenly became very, very clear to her. That night, at my console, the world was a map of small tragedies. a 5-car pileup on the bypass, a domestic disturbance in the foothills, a suspected overdose downtown. I handled them all, my voice calm, my fingers flying, routing units, coordinating aid. But I was listening. I was waiting. Then, at 2:17 a.m., it came. Line 3 flashed, 911, what is your emergency? A girl, crying, not the hysterical sobs, but the choked, terrified kind. I do not know, these men. They said I had to sign. They said it's for security assistance for my apartment. My blood turned to ice. It was the pattern. Ma'am, where are you? I'm in my car. I just left. They said if I did not sign, they'd report me. They took a picture of my green card. They said High Noon Services just needs to protect the neighborhood. My voice remained level, professional. Can you give me your location? I need to send an officer to take your report. No, police, she sobbed. They are the police. They had badges. Oh God, I'm so stupid. I signed it. The line went dead. I stared at the console, but I was already moving. I saved the audio snippet. I logged the incoming number. I ran the cell tower triangulation. The call had come from a 3-block radius in the warehouse district. The same phrases, the same threat, the same fear I'd felt. I saved the file to a secure, encrypted drive I carried on my keychain. This was not a dispatch file. This was evidence. I did not use the burner phone. I waited until Jonah picked me in the box truck the next morning. I need to see him, I said. Jonah just nodded, as if he'd been expecting it. He did not drive me to the hotel. We drove to a sprawling, nondescript warehouse complex. The Vesper Arts Logistics logo was on the main building. Inside, it smelled of raw pine, straw, and industrial glue. Men were building large, custom shipping crates. It looked completely legitimate. Jonah led me past the crating floor, through a keypad-locked door, and into a hallway that was silent and cold. The smell of sawdust was gone, replaced by the sterile hum of air conditioning and electronics. He opened another door. It was a data center. Banks of servers blinked in the dim, cool light. Nico Valente stood in front of a wall of monitors, not in a suit, but in a dark sweater and slacks, a cup of coffee in his hand. You were right to come, he said, not turning. Professor Calder. You know about him. He's not a professor. He's a consultant for Mesa Ridge. His name is Arthur Calder. His job is to find leverage. He finally turned to me. Your instincts are good, but you're here about the call. I just nodded, my throat tight. You said you wanted to stop running, he said. You wanted to stop their money. Yes. This is bigger than $45 extortion fees. Lena, that's just how they get their hooks in. He pointed to one of the screens. It was a complex flow chart, full of anonymized LLCs and bankroading numbers. Mesa Ridge does not just collect, they launder. They move dirty money through the art world, my world. He traced a line on the screen with his finger. They force a small business to pay a security fee. That fee is bundled and paid as a premium to a company called Southwest Fine Claims. Southwest Fine Claims then insures a piece of art, usually a forgery or a piece that does not exist for an absurd amount of money. The art is then reported stolen or damaged in transit. Southwest Fine Claims pays out the massive insurance claim to another shell company, clean. I stared at the screen. This was a sophisticated, complex operation. How do you stop that? You cannot stop the snake by cutting off the tail, he said. You have to stop the head, or at least the wallet. They move the physical cash, the extortion money, the payoffs before it hits the first bank. They move it every Thursday. We just never knew where the collection points were, until now. He looked at me. The realization hit me. The call, I said, the girl. You have the coordinates, he said. You have the audio signature. You have the pattern. They are getting sloppy, arrogant. You want me to be a mole. You are a dispatcher, Lena. You are the city's nervous system. You hear everything. He stepped closer. We build a shadow hotline. You hear a call that fits the profile. High noon security fees, threats you log the location, the time, the phrasing. You get that data to Jonah. My team verifies it. We map the collection points. We find the central hub, and on Thursday, we take it. It was a declaration of war. He was asking me to step from being a victim to being a combatant. "What are your terms?" I asked, surprised at the steadiness of my own voice. He studied my face. "My terms are simple. My organization does not get exposed, and we do not touch civilians. We do not involve people who are not in the game. That is my promise." "Then I have mine," I said, meeting his gaze. "I will help you find the money. I will help you map their network. But no killing. I will not be the cause of that. No one dies in front of me." A flicker of something surprised respect passed through his dark eyes. He held out his hand, not for a note. This time, for a handshake. "No killing in front of you?" he agreed. "We have a deal." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and felt terrifyingly solid. That night, returning to the Sunset Kiva, I felt something I had not felt in months. It was not hope. It was sharper. It was the cold, clear feeling of purpose. I was not just running. I was hunting. I walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway toward our suite, 212. I was tired, but it was a good tired. The adrenaline of the data center, of the deal, was fading. I put my keycard in the slot, and I saw it. Slipped under the door, just sitting on the carpet, was a plain 9x12 manila envelope. My breath hitched. This was a secure floor. Housekeeping was finished hours ago. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was not sealed. I fumbled with the clasp, my fingers suddenly numb. I tipped it open. A single photograph slid into my hand. It was not a picture of me. It was Ray. It was a clear, high-resolution shot taken from across the street. She was walking out of the Cactus Bloom Diner, her server's apron still on, laughing at something on her phone. The streetlight caught the red in her hair. There was no note, no text. There did not need to be. The message was absolutely clear. "We know who you are. We know where she works. And we know who you are with." The fragile sense of control, the partnership, the plan, it all shattered. They were not just watching me anymore. They were watching her. And they had just proven they could get to us anywhere. Even inside Nico Valente's cage, the photograph was still in my hand. I could feel the sharp corners of it digging into my palm. Ray, laughing. I was standing in the middle of the hotel suite, frozen, when the knock came. Not a housekeeping knock. It was firm, precise. 2 taps. I looked through the peephole. It was Jonah Pike. I opened the door. He did not look at me. His gaze swept the hallway behind him. "Mr. Valente is waiting in the truck. We are moving you. Both of you." "Moving us where they found us here?" "The compound," he said, as if it were the only word that mattered. "Ray, get your things. Now." Ray scrambled. Grabbing her backpack, I shoved the photograph into my pocket. Jonah led us down a service elevator, through a concrete tunnel I never knew existed, and into the loading bay. The white box truck was gone. In its place was a black, gleaming SUV, the kind that looks armored even if it is not. The engine was running. Jonah opened the back door for Ray. "Get in. Stay low." Ray looked at me, her eyes wide. "Lena." "It's okay," I lied. "It's safer." I moved to get in with her, but Jonah put a hand out. "He wants you up front." The passenger door was already open. Nico Valente was behind the wheel. I slid into the leather seat. The door closed with a heavy, solid thunk, sealing out the world. He did not speak. He just put the car in gear and pulled out of the garage, leaving Jonah behind to follow with Ray in a different car. We drove through the city, and the silence inside the cabin was heavier than any I had ever known. It was a vacuum, filled only by the sound of the tires on the asphalt. I watched the city lights blur past, then the lights started to dim. The wind was picking up, and it was not a clean wind. It was full of dust. "A storm," I whispered. Nico just nodded. He kept driving, leaving the city grid, climbing up the winding road toward the mountains. The sky turned a sickly, bruised yellow. The wind began to howl, and fine grit started to ping against the windshield. It was a sandstorm, one of the bad ones, rolling in fast. He pulled the SUV off the road at a scenic overlook, Cedar Ridge, below us. The lights of Albuquerque were hazy, trying to shine through the shroud of dust. The wind rocked the heavy vehicle. He turned off the engine. The thwack thump of the windshield wipers cutting through the sand was the only sound. "High ground," he said, his voice quiet, breaking the long silence. "It makes people feel less afraid. You can see what is coming." "I did not see this coming," I said, my voice shaking. I pulled the photograph from my pocket. "They got inside. They left this under our door, in your safe hotel." He did not look at the picture. He already knew. It was a message. His hand moved, resting on the back of my seat, just behind my shoulder. He was not touching me, but I could feel the heat of his palm, a silent perimeter. The confession tore out of me, raw and unfiltered. I have not slept, not in 3 months, not one full night since that call. I close my eyes and I hear the line go dead, and now, this picture. He turned his head, his dark eyes focused on me, not with pity, but with a kind of clinical assessment. "You cannot fight them like this. You are running on nothing. Your body is in a constant state of panic. You cannot think clearly. And where am I supposed to sleep? Nico, they found me. They found Ray. The Kiva was temporary. It was meant to get you off the street. They pressed, they left the photo, and they made a mistake. They showed their hand," he said. "You and Ray, you will stay at the Valente Mesa compound. It is secure." "Another cage," I said, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "A fortress," he corrected, his voice flat. "You will stay for a few nights. You will eat. You will sleep. Your body has to remember what safe feels like. You cannot function. You cannot help me until you reset the panic." The silence returned, but the thwack thump of the wipers was a rhythm. The cab of the truck felt like a small, insulated bubble in the middle of a swirling, chaotic world. I felt exposed, raw, exhausted to the bone. My hair, always pulled back in a tight, professional clip for my shift, felt heavy. I raised a trembling hand to fix it, to smooth the loose strands, to put the armor back in place. His hand moved from the seat back. He caught my wrist, his grip gentle but absolute. My hand stopped, hovering in the air. "Lena?" He just said my name. That was all. His gaze was locked on mine. In the dim light of the dashboard, his eyes were deep. He was so close. His other hand, the one that had been on the wheel, came up, not to my face. He moved slowly, deliberately to the back of my head. His fingers, warm and sure, found the plastic clip. He paused. He did not move, his fingers just resting against my hair. He was asking for permission without a word. I did not move. I barely breathed. I did not pull away. Slowly, carefully, he slid the clip free. My hair, heavy and long, tumbled down. It fell over my shoulders, brushing against his hand, covering his wrist. It felt like a white flag. It felt like a surrender. Our eyes stayed locked. The moment stretched, longer than a single heartbeat, longer than 10. The world outside was grit and wind, but in here, there was only this. He leaned in. The first brush of his lips was hesitant. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a question. It was dry, warm, and searching. My own lips parted on a breath I did not know I was holding. I did not pull away. I leaned into him, a fraction of an inch, but it was enough. It was my answer. That was all the permission he needed. The kiss deepened. It was not rough, not demanding, not like anything I had ever imagined. It was a slow burn, a gradual claim. It was about warmth in the middle of the cold storm. It tasted of coffee and the faint, metallic scent of the desert night. My breath hitched, a small sound in the quiet. My hand, the one he had caught, was free. I lifted it, not to pull him closer, not to push him away. I laid it flat against his chest. Beneath my palm, his heart. It was not racing. It was not pounding. It was slow, steady, thump, thump, thump. It was the most stable thing I had felt in 90 days. It was a foundation. It was a fortress wall in the middle of the blowing sand. My fingers, of their own accord, curled, gripping the soft fabric of his sweater. I was holding on. He pulled back, not all the way, just enough to break the kiss. His forehead rested against mine. We were breathing the same air, his breath warm on my face. "I want you to choose me when you are clear-headed, Lena," he whispered, his voice rough. "Not because you are scared." My eyes were still closed. I managed a small nod, a tiny movement. Trust. It was not being built with promises. It was being built with this, with the restraint he was showing right now. A vibration, a harsh, buzzing sound, alien in the quiet intimacy. It was not my phone. I fumbled in my pocket, the burner phone, the one he had given me. The screen was lit. Jonah Pike. My heart leaped into my throat. I answered, "Jonah." "They are moving." Jonah's voice was pure gravel. "The black 4Runner. It just pulled up to your old apartment complex. Sandstone Court. I have eyes on it. 2 other men, gray suits, just got out. They are going in." My old apartment, the one they had waited in, the one that was empty. "It is a trap," I whispered, looking at Nico. "They think I am there, or they think I will come back." The trap was open. Nico's expression hardened, the man who had kissed me vanishing in an instant. He took the phone from my hand. "Jonah," he commanded, "lock down the Kiva. Get Ray to the compound. Use the service tunnels. I am bringing Lena there myself. Now." He ended the call, tossing the phone into the console. The storm howled, buffeting the truck. He was not looking at me anymore. He was looking out at the smothered city lights. He turned back, his gaze pinning me to the seat. The tenderness was gone, replaced by a flat, hard certainty. "Tonight," he said, and it was not a promise. It was a statement of fact. "I am the one protecting you." He put the truck in gear and pulled onto the highway, driving straight into the heart of the storm. The two worlds, the 911 dispatcher and the Mafia air, had just slammed together, and they were not pulling apart. For the next 3 days, the Valente Mesa compound was a ghost story. I saw Ray at meals, watched her slowly relax in the sun-drenched courtyard, but I was not there. Nico had moved my base of operations. I was back in the Vesper Arts logistics warehouse, in the cold, humming data center. It was now a temporary command post. My headset was on, but I was no longer just a city dispatcher. I was Nico's dispatcher. His team had jury-rigged a system, routing the specific 911 audio I needed, filtering for key phrases: high noon, security fee, Mesa Ridge. In 72 hours, I logged 5 more calls, 5 more victims. I had their coordinates, their terror, and the exact syntax of the threats. I mapped them. A pattern emerged, a cluster of activity around an abandoned commercial sector. Nico stood over the map with me, his presence filling the cold room. "They're moving cash tonight. It's Thursday," he said. "This is where they feel safe. A defunct strip mall, the Silver Pecan self-storage." "You're going to hit them." "We are," he corrected. "You are the eyes, my team is the hands, but we are not just robbing them. Lena, we are setting a snare. Mesa Ridge is a ghost because they hide behind badges and shell corporations. To kill a ghost, you have to make it bleed. We are going to hit their money, and we are going to make them bleed." He laid out the plan. His team was already moving. Jonah Pike and 2 others were inside the ventilation system of the abandoned mall. Their target, a portable, reinforced steel safe that High Noon Civic Services used to consolidate the weekly cash collections before they were laundered. Jonah's voice crackled in my headset, a private channel. "We are in. Target is active." I switched my audio feed. I was live, listening to the inside of the storage unit. I heard the heavy clank of a metal door, the scrape of the portable safe being rolled into place. Men's voices. "That's it for the night. Verify the invoices. File B6, $90. File D9, $45. File F3, $90. My hand tightened on my pen. Then, the lead voice spoke. Verify authorization syntax 8 Kilo 27 Alpha. My heart stopped. I knew that syntax. It was not just a code, it was a key. I had seen it on my own bank statement from high noon. I pulled up the audio from the crying girl 2 nights ago. Her invoice number. I pulled up the logs from the other calls. Nico, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the room. It's a decryption key, the invoice syntax. It matches the case files I've been logging, all 12 of them. They are not just random numbers. They're a routing manifest. They're telling the safe where the money is sorted to. Nico looked at me, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Tell me you have it. I have all 12 keys, I said. I can read their map. Good, he said, turning to a microphone connected to his team. Jonah, change of plan. We are not just bugging it, we are swapping it. The operation was live. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was their commander. My screen split into 4 feeds from the discrete cameras Jonah's team had placed. I was watching the perimeter, the access road, the hallway. 2 hostiles at the main gate, I said, my voice pure dispatcher. Calm, flat, authoritative. Gray suits, they are armed, they are stationary. Team 1, you are clear to move. Row D. I watched on the camera as Jonah and another man, both in dark fatigues, moved like smoke. They did not pick the lock on the storage unit. They used a hydraulic spreader and silently removed the entire door mechanism in less than 30 seconds. Inside, they found the safe. They did not crack it. They worked with terrifying speed, attaching a harness. They lifted the entire heavy unit onto a silent trolley and rolled it out. Where is the new one? Jonah whispered. Team 2, deploy, I ordered. From the other end of the hall, 2 more men wheeled in a perfect duplicate, identical in every way. Down to the scuff marks and the high noon logo, they rolled it into place. The decoy is set, Jonah confirmed. This was Nico's genius. The decoy safe was not empty. It was filled with carefully forged bundles of receipts for every extortion fee we had tracked, each one printed on high-quality paper, each one watermarked with the official emblem of the Mesa Ridge Task Group. They were planting evidence that signed their own name to the crime. Swap complete, Jonah said. We are moving to Xville. I checked the feeds. Gate is clear. Hostiles are... I stopped. A new set of headlights. A black pickup truck. Moving fast. No lights. Abort new vehicle. Blocking the exit ramp. They're trapping you. Panic flared in my headset. We're boxed in. He's right at the gate. I slammed my hand on the desk. All teams, stop, I commanded, my voice cutting through the fear. Do not engage. Do not fire. Team 1, reverse. Move to grid C4. There is a storm drain access panel. That is your new exit. I am routing you now. We cannot get to C4, Jonah said, his voice tense. The truck is moving. It's coming down the main aisle. They're hunting us. I looked at Nico. He was already speaking into his own comm. Jonah, hold your position. Do not move. Suddenly, the world on my 4 screens turned red. A deafening alarm shrieked through my headset, making me rip it off. Whoop, whoop, whoop. The fire alarms, the strobes flashed, painting the entire complex in frantic, pulsing red light. Nico had triggered the main alarm system for the entire block. It was chaos. On the camera feeds, I saw the men in the pickup truck slam on their brakes. They were blinded by the strobes, deafened by the alarm. They were hunters 1 second and rats in a trap the next. They were expecting a covert fight in the dark. They were not prepared for a public spectacle. The fire alarm meant the real police, the real fire department, were on their way. The men in the truck could not be found here. The truck's engine roared. It smashed in reverse and tore back out the gate, disappearing into the night. Now, I said, putting my headset back on. Jonah, C4, go. We are out. His voice came back, breathless. We have the package. An hour later, in the data center, they cracked the real safe. It was not just cash. Inside were 6 thick bundles of photographed ledgers, and tucked in a hidden compartment, 2 black memory cards? Camera data, Jonah said, placing them on the table. From their own cameras. It's everything, dates, faces, drop-offs. We had it. We had the artery. As we stood there, the burner phone in my pocket buzzed. A text alert. It was from a silent tripwire Nico's team had left at my old apartment. The one Mesa Ridge had been in. The one they had baited. "They're taking the trap," Nico said, looking at the alert. The two men in gray suits kicked in the door of apartment 2B. They fanned out, guns raised, shouting, "Clear!" They swept the bedroom, the kitchen, the closets. It was empty, hollow, sterile. They had been played. One of them spotted the old digital answering machine on the kitchen counter. The red light was blinking. One message. He pressed play. My voice filled the empty apartment. Not the crying girl from the phone, not the whispered victim. It was my dispatcher voice. Cold, clear, and perfectly calm. It was a single sentence, set on a loop. I am a 911 dispatcher. I am the voice you hear in the dark, and I am not afraid anymore. The two men just stood there, listening to my voice echo in the room they thought I was hiding in. The adrenaline drained out of me all at once, leaving me shaking. Nico handed me a bottle of water. My fingers were too numb to open it. He took it from me, twisted the cap with a sharp crack, and handed it back. "Your voice on the radio," he said, his own voice quiet. "You cut through the panic. You did not hesitate. You have the head of a commander." I took a long drink, the cold water burning my throat. "I just want one night's sleep," I whispered, the exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. "I just want to close my eyes and not dream." Far away, in a leather-bound study, Professor Calder listened to his phone. He heard the report from the storage facility, the alarms, the missing safe, the surgical precision. He hung up and made another call. "It's confirmed," he said, his voice tight. "This was not a random hit. It was planned. Valente is in." The game had just escalated. The strike on the self-storage unit was a declaration of war, and Mesa Ridge answered. They did not answer from the shadows, not with a black forerunner. They answered with the full, righteous fury of the system they commanded. The next morning, every local news channel led with the same press conference. A stern-faced man in a crisp suit, standing behind a podium bearing the seal of the Western Inner-City Bureau, the WIB, the official, multi-agency task force that Mesa Ridge used as its face. "Late last night," the spokesman said, his face a mask of public servitude, "a legitimate investigation into organized crime was violently obstructed by associates of the Valente Trust. This organization, which has long operated on the fringes of our community, has now escalated to actively impeding federal and state officers in the performance of their duties." My blood ran cold. They were spinning it. They were painting Nico as the criminal, the one obstructing justice. We had been the ones stopping a crime, and they were using their badges to flip the narrative. And then came the second blow. By noon, the sleazier online tabloids had a new story. Someone had leaked the photograph, the one from the parking garage at the Sunset Kiva. There I was, clear as day, standing next to Nico Valente. The headline was brutal 911 dispatcher's midnight rendezvous with reputed mob boss. They were destroying my name, my credibility, my job. I was no longer a victim. I was a mafia mall. I was compromised. "Let them," Nico said. We were back in the data center, the news playing on one of the screens. His voice was calm. A dog barks loudest when it's cornered. "They're calling me your... I could not even say the word. "It's noise," he said, shutting off the screen. "It's meant to distract you. Focus on the map. They're hurt. They lost their cash and their ledgers. They will make a mistake." The mistake came 2 hours later. Ray called me, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "Lena, you are not going to believe this. You know that diner manager I have? The one who's always a jerk. He's getting transferred." I went rigid. "What? Ray?" "Yeah, and he said head office was so impressed with my work ethic. They want me to interview for a promotion, a shift supervisor position. It's at the main Saguaro Business Center, downtown. I have to go now. They said they need to fill it by tonight." The Saguaro Business Center. I knew that building. It was a massive, half-empty commercial tower, a ghost building. Ray, no, I said, my voice low and urgent. You are not going. That is not real. What are you talking about? It's a promotion. It's more money. I can't just hide in this fortress forever. I have to go. It's at 3 o'clock. Ray, listen to me. It is a trap. Do not leave the compound. You're being paranoid. Lena, you think everyone is Mesa Ridge. I'll be back by 5. She hung up. I sprinted from the room, down the sterile hallway to the compound's main living area. She was gone. Her coat was missing. She had slipped out past the guards, who were trained to stop threats from coming in, not a 19-year-old girl from walking out. I ran back to the data center, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. She's gone. She's gone. Nico, they have her. They lured her out. I was grabbing my jacket, heading for the door. I'm going. Nico's hand shot out and grabbing my arm. It was not gentle. No, you are not. Get your hand off me. They have my sister. And you are going to run right into their trap, he said, his voice like steel. He physically pushed me back, forcing me into the dispatcher's chair, the one with the headset. You will do exactly what they want. You will panic. You will run. And you will give them all the leverage they need. She's my family, Nico, I screamed, slamming my hands on the console. And you are my commander, he roared back, his face inches from mine. The person with the map does not run into the maze. You sit, you think, and you use the map. I stared at him, my breath coming in ragged, painful sobs. He was right. He was horribly, cruelly right. Panicked. I was a victim. Calm. I was a weapon. The burner phone rang. The one Calder had used. I answered. Lena, Ray's voice, small and trembling. I'm sorry. It was a trap. The room it's empty. Ray, are you okay? Are you hurt? Then his voice, the smooth, academic voice of Professor Calder. Your cousin is perfectly safe. Miss Hart, we are in suite 1204. She is just helping us with an inquiry. We are very interested in the return of our property, the safe, the ledgers. If you touch her, bring them. Come alone. You have 1 hour, or Ray's community ties will be permanently severed. The line went dead. I looked at Nico. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. Suite 1204, Saguaro Business Center. Jonah is already moving the team, Nico said, but they'll have the whole building locked down. They'll be watching every elevator, every door. Then we make them look somewhere else. I looked at the console, at the links to the city's emergency grid, the WIB system. You wanted to make them bleed. Let's make them blind. I put on my headset. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was a dispatcher. I knew the protocols. I knew the codes. I knew exactly how to create a panic. I fabricated an anonymous tip. Not just any tip. I used the specific codes for a major terrorist threat, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, a dirty bomb. I routed the call through a spoofed number, making it look like it came from a burner phone near the city's largest power station, the one on the complete opposite side of town from the Saguaro building. I hit enter. The effect was instantaneous. Every police scanner in the city, every federal radio, lit up. I had just sent the entire Mesa Ridge task group, the entire WIB, and half the city's police force on a high-priority, city-wide emergency. They're moving, Nico said, watching a traffic grid monitor. Every car they have is screaming across town. They've pulled their perimeter from Saguaro. They have to. A bomb threat overrides a kidnapping. Jonah, I said into my comm, you are clear. They are blind. Go. Jonah's team of 4 men entered the Saguaro building's lobby like they were maintenance men. They took the service elevator to the 12th floor. We're at the door. Jonah's voice came back. 1204. It's a maglock. Steel reinforced. We can't breach it quietly. Code, I asked. 10-digit keypad. We can't hack it in time. I closed my eyes. Searching. My mind raced through the thousands of calls. Slang, cop talk, the criminal jargon. A call from 6 months ago. A kid bragging about breaking into a high-end dispensary. You just gotta pop the cherry. Man, 22*99. They all use it. A default installer code. Try 22*99, I said. A pause, then the faint click of the maglock disengaging. We are in, Jonah said. The internal security feed, which Jonah's team had patched into, flickered to life on my screen. I saw the office, empty, except for Ray, tied to a chair, and Calder. He was no longer a professor. He had removed his tweed jacket. He was wearing a tactical harness and a badge on his belt. He was speaking into a radio, his face furious, probably hearing about the bomb threat. Ray, now, Jonah's voice commanded. On the screen, I saw Ray do exactly as I had taught her. She dropped her head and kicked her legs out, toppling the chair backward, away from Calder. It was the 2 seconds Jonah needed. His team was in a silent, dark wave. Calder reached for his weapon. He never had a chance. One of Jonah's men disarmed him. Another had him in a chokehold. It was over in less than 5 seconds. On the monitor, I watched Calder, held by Jonah's men, his face a mask of disbelief. The professor was well and truly gone. He was just another thug in a uniform. Nico spoke into his mic. My terms. Jonah, not hers. The girl is clean. Bring her, him. Make him disappear. No, I shouted. Nico, you promised me. Nico looked at me, his face hard. He took your family. He's not a civilian. You promised, I insisted, my voice shaking. No killing, not in my name. He stared at me, a long, hard silence stretching between us. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Your way, he said into the mic. Package him. No damage. Send him to the Sandview City Ethics Committee. Anonymous tip, let them meet their own. He kept his word. Calder was bound, gagged, a hood placed over his head. An anonymous call sent the ethics committee to a back alley where they found a corrupt official with a note detailing his involvement with High Noon Services. We had Ray back. We had won. The victory was short-lived. The WIB, furious about the bomb threat hoax and the public humiliation of Calder's arrest, went public again. They announced a full, wide-ranging search warrant for all Valente properties, naming Nico personally. But Nico was already one step ahead. Before the warrant was even signed, his lawyers held their own press conference. Mr. Valente welcomes a full and transparent investigation, his lawyer said smoothly. In fact, he invites the WIBs and the press to join him on a full tour of his Vesper Arts logistics facility this afternoon. He has nothing to hide. It was a brilliant countermove. They raided the warehouse, the one I had been in. They found exactly what Nico wanted them to find: art, packing crates and sawdust. The real data center, hidden behind a false wall, was never touched. That evening, a local reporter, an independent blogger named Nadia Flores, who had been chasing the security fee story for weeks, found me. She got a message to me through one of Nico's men. She wanted an interview. Nico left the choice to me. I met her, not in the compound, but in a small, neutral cafe. The camera was on. Lena, she said, the city is calling you a mafia mall. They say you're compromised. Are you... I looked directly into the camera. My voice was no longer the victim's. It was not the commander's. It was just mine. I am a 911 dispatcher, I said, my voice steady. My job is to listen to people in trouble. For months, I have been listening to people in this city being threatened, extorted, and terrorized by a group hiding behind a badge. I was one of them. The system I believed in failed me. It failed all of us. This is not about a man. This is about a corrupt task force that is preying on the people it swore to protect. This is about community safety. And I will not be silent. The interview aired. The narrative shifted. I was not the Mafia Mall anymore. I was the 911 whistleblower. The game had gone public, and I had just chosen my side, not in the shadows, but in the light. We returned to the Valente Mesa compound as the first flurry of snow began to ghost through the pines. The air, which had been dry and dusty for so long, now smelled sharp and clean of cold resin and impending winter. We got Ray inside. Jonah Pike's men moving with quiet efficiency, getting her settled in a warm room with food. She was safe. She was unharmed. and then the adrenaline left my body. It drained out of me all at once, leaving a hollow, echoing void. I started to tremble. It was not from the cold, it was the crash, the high-stakes gamble with the bomb threat, the terror for Ray, the confrontation with Calder. It all hit me. My hands shook so violently I could not clasp them together. I was standing in the compound's main hallway, a vast space of stone and dark wood, unable to move. Nico had been speaking to one of his men. He finished, turned, and saw me. He just stood there for a moment, watching me vibrate, watching me come apart now that the danger was over. He walked over to me, and he was not wearing a suit, just the dark sweater he'd had on in the data center. Without a word, he stripped it off, pulling it over his head. For a second. He stood in just a black t-shirt, the muscles in his arms and shoulders defined in the low light. He did not hesitate. He simply draped the heavy wool sweater over my shoulders. It was impossibly warm. It smelled of him, that scent of coffee and clean soap, and something uniquely, safely male. It enveloped me, a heavy, comforting weight. The gesture was so simple, so devoid of artifice, so gentle. And it was the gentleness that broke me. The armor I had worn for 3 months, the rigid control of the dispatcher, the cold fury of the commander, it all just cracked. I did not sob. I just stood there, drowning in his sweater, shaking. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on," he said, his voice low. He steered me out of the hallway, into a private study. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, a low fire crackling, casting the room in amber and shadow. He sat me in a deep leather armchair and then knelt in front of me. "You're safe, Lena," he said. He did not touch me again. He just knelt, waiting. I can't stop," I whispered, my teeth chattering. "You do not have to," he said. "It's over. You won." I looked at his face, illuminated by the fire, and he was not a boss, and he was not a savior, and he was just a man, watching me with an intensity that was more than just concern. It was possession, it was understanding. His hand came up, not fast, but with that same deliberation I remembered from the overlook. His fingers, warm from the fire, cupped the back of my neck. His thumb found the frantic pulse below my ear and just rested there, a point of anchor. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering closed. He rose from his knees and, in one smooth motion, lowered himself to sit on the edge of the armchair, boxing me in. He did not kiss me. He just held my neck, his thumb stroking that frantic pulse, slowly, steadily, until my trembling began to subside, matching his rhythm. "Lena," he whispered. My eyes opened, and he was there. The kiss, this time, was not a question. It was a statement. It was a claim. It was slow and deep, and it was meant to erase every last tremor. His other hand came up, framing my face, his fingers threading into my hair. I did not just feel his lips. I felt the fire on my skin, the wool of his sweater on my shoulders, and the solid, unshakable strength of his hands holding me together. I tilted my head back, a silent invitation, a surrender to the safety he was offering. My breath caught, coming in short, sharp gasps as the kiss deepened, moving from comfort to something else, something hotter, something that had been simmering under the surface since the night of the sandstorm. The firelight flickered, catching the moisture on my lips, the dark intensity of his half-closed eyes, the pale skin of my throat. My hands, which had been clutching the chair, came up. I did not grab him. I just rested them on his chest, my fingers spreading wide, feeling the steady, slow beat of his heart, just like in the car, my fortress. He broke the kiss, but only to move, to press his lips to my temple, then to the shell of my ear, his breath a hot whisper. "Lena," he said again, not a question, not a statement, but a promise. He said my name as if it were a word he was learning, a word he intended to own. "Nico," I breathed back, and my hands finally clasped his, my fingers tangled with his, a knot. He pulled back, just enough to look at me. The firelight played in his dark hair. We just breathed, our hands locked, our foreheads almost touching. The room was silent, except for the crackle of the fire and the new sound of rain tapping against the thick glass windows. The snow had turned to a cold, steady rain. He did not need to say it. I felt it, but he said it anyway. His voice rough. "I am here." It was not a vow of forever. It was a statement of fact. He was here, in this room, in this moment, and he was not leaving. And because he was here, I could finally unlock the last room, the one I kept boarded up, even from myself. "That call," I whispered, my voice thick. "The one from 3 months ago, the one that started my insomnia." His gaze sharpened. He did not speak. He just listened. "It was a girl. She was whispering. She said, 'They're stopping the car. I'm in the trunk.' She gave me a location, a partial plate, and then she just... The line went dead. Not a hang-up, a signal loss, like the phone was destroyed." I pulled my gaze from his, staring into the fire. I looped the call for forensics. I filed the report. It was buried. The unit that responded Mesa Ridge. The report came back, unfounded call. No vehicle. Probable hoax. But she was real. Nico. I know she was. I looked back at him, my eyes burning. I think they killed her. I think Mesa Ridge took that call, found her, and, I could not finish. Nico's hand tightened on mine. He was not looking at me with pity. He was looking with a cold, calculating fury. He was looking at a loose end. "The logs," he said, his voice flat. "The official 911 logs are wiped, but the raw data from the cell tower, that's different. That's telecom territory, not police." "I cannot get that," I said. "That's sealed." "I can," he said. He was not boasting. He was stating a fact. "I will get the raw signal log from the Desert Crown Tower for that night. I will find out exactly where that signal died, and I will find out who was there." He was not just offering help. He was stepping into that locked room with me. He was taking the file, the one that had been poisoning me for 90 days, and he was opening it. A soft knock on the door made us both jolt. The door creaked open. Ray stood there, holding 2 steaming mugs. I made hot cocoa," she said, her voice small. "The kitchen's amazing. I figured you guys might be cold." I pulled away from Nico, wiping my eyes. Nico stood up, the tension breaking. He was suddenly the host again. "Thank you, Ray," he said. Ray walked in, handing me a mug. She held the other one out to Nico. As he took it, she giggled. You've got, She pointed to his t-shirt. He looked down. A smudge of cocoa powder was streaked across his chest, left there by Ray when she was making it. He looked at the smudge, then at Ray, then at me, and he smiled. It was not a big smile, but it was real. "I guess I am," he said. Ray laughed. I laughed, and for a moment, we were not a dispatcher, a mafia boss and a hostage. We were just 3 people, in a warm room with hot cocoa, laughing at a smudge on a sweater. We were almost a family. Ray said goodnight, leaving us. Nico looked at the fire. "Get some sleep. Lena, you've earned it." He left before the dawn. I did not sleep. Not at first. I sat in the armchair, his heavy sweater still draped over me. The fire burned down to embers. For the first time, the silence was not threatening. It was just quiet. My hand went to my left wrist. I traced the thin, white line there, a scar, not from an enemy, but from myself, from a time, years ago, when I was 19 and the world had tried to break me, a time when I had learned that the only person I could ever rely on was myself. I touched that scar every morning, a reminder. I touched it now, and I smiled. Not alone anymore, I whispered to the dark room. Miles away, in a sterile government office, a printer whirred to life. A man in a gray suit tore the page off, stamped it, and put it in an envelope. A legal summons. Lena Hart, ordered to appear before an investigative grand jury on charges of obstructing a federal investigation. The final battle had begun. The summons was delivered to the compound by a stone-faced federal marshal. It was not a criminal warrant. It was, in many ways, worse. It was a summons to testify before the Desert Transit Committee. It was a show trial. The charge was bureaucratic and absurd. Inquiry into improper connections and use of city emergency infrastructure for the benefit of organized crime. They were using my job, my headset, against me. They were painting me as Nico's asset inside the 911 system. "I can have you on a plane in an hour," Nico said. His voice was flat, practical. We were in the study. The fire long dead. A private airstrip, Costa Rica. New name, new passport. They will never find you. I looked at the summons, at my name typed in cold, black letters. I thought of the girl in the trunk. I thought of Ray's terror. "No," I said, my voice quiet but unshakable. "They have spent their entire careers hiding in the shadows of the system, using it as a weapon. I am not running. I choose to stand in the light. Let them come." Nico watched me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he gave a single sharp nod. "Then we stand in the light." The hearing room was dark wood and bad lighting, designed to make you feel small. The committee was 3 city council bureaucrats, their faces gray and impartial, which meant that they were already bought. A sharp-faced lawyer, representing the Western Intercity Bureau, was conducting the inquiry. "Miss Hart," he said, his voice dripping with false concern, "you claim you were a victim, yet our information suggests you were, in fact, an active collaborator with known criminal elements." He snapped his fingers. On a large screen behind him, the photo flashed. Me, Nico, the parking garage at the Sunset Kiva. It was grainy, stark, and utterly damning. "Is this you, Miss Hart, meeting with the reputed head of the Valente Trust, a known organized crime figure, in an underground parking garage after midnight?" The room was silent. I felt the committee's eyes on me. I did not look at the photo. I looked directly at the lawyer. "Yes, that is me," I said. My voice was calm, clear, and amplified by the microphone, my dispatcher voice. "That photo is an excellent piece of surveillance, but it is incomplete. It conveniently cuts out the 30 seconds just before it was taken, the part where 2 men from the Mesa Ridge task group were inside my apartment, waiting to ambush me." The lawyer's smile faltered. "That is an unsubstantiated—" "It cuts out the context, sir," I continued, my voice rising, filling the room. The context where I had just discovered my home was compromised. My cousin was being stalked, and the only people I could report it to were the very men who were hunting me. I did not meet with a crime boss. I ran to the only person in this city who was not afraid of you. "Allegations," the lawyer snapped. "You have no proof." "Don't I asked. The doors at the back of the hearing room opened. Jonah Pike walked in, and he was not in tactical gear. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his hair slicked back. He looked like a high-powered corporate lawyer. He held a slim briefcase. He walked to the committee clerk and placed a single data drive on the desk. "What is the meaning of this?" the chairman demanded. "An anonymous submission to the committee, sir," Jonah said, his voice polite and bland. "It is the raw cellular waveform data from the black Toyota 4Runner registered to the Mesa Ridge Task Group. It shows a complete 6-week log of that vehicle stalking Miss Hart. It shows it parked outside her home, her place of work, and her cousin's diner. It proves she was the one being hunted." The committee members stared at the drive as if it were a snake. The WIB lawyer was, for the first time, silent. And as the committee called for a panicked, immediate recess, my burner phone vibrated. It was a link from the reporter, Nadia Flores. Her story had just gone live. The headline blew the hearing out of the water. "The slush fund in the sands, how High Noon's security fees are funneling millions to City Councilman Arden Vale." Nadia had done it. She had followed the money. She had linked High Noon's extortion fees through the Southwest Fine Claims insurance scam directly to a political action committee controlled by one of the most powerful men in the city. Mesa Ridge was not just a crew of corrupt cops. They were the bagmen for the political elite. The retaliation was immediate. They could not touch me. Nadia's article and Jonah's data dump had turned me into a public whistleblower. So they went for the king. They hit the Vesper Arts warehouse. This was not a polite tour. It was a full-scale tactical raid by the WIB, with news cameras invited to watch. They stormed the building with rifles and body armor. But there was no fight. Nico was waiting for them in the lobby, standing by a crate of pottery. He was wearing a dark suit. Jonah and 3 other men stood behind him, their hands clasped, unarmed. Nico Valente, a WIB agent, shouted, "You are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and tampering with federal evidence." The charge was for the safe swap. They were pinning it all on him. Nico just smiled, a cold, empty smile. He held his hands out, palms up. They slammed the cuffs on him, a rough, public display. He never took his eyes off the main news camera. He was sending a message. He was sacrificing his night to save the board. It was a strategic surrender. They put him in a black van and drove away. I was back in the true data center, the hidden room, watching it all on the monitors. I was frantic, my mind racing. What could I trade? What could I do? His lawyer found me an hour later, and he looked exhausted. He'd been allowed 10 minutes with Nico at the holding facility. He handed me a single piece of paper, folded small. Nico's sharp, angular handwriting. "Don't trade your freedom for mine. Untie the knot at the source." He was not asking for a rescue. He was giving me an order. Win the war. "The source," I whispered. I sat down at the console, the cold chair grounding me. I pulled up the financial flowchart Nico had shown me days before, the web of LLCs. But now I had the missing name, Arden Vale. I cross-referenced the registration numbers of Vale's pack with the shell companies in Nico's chart. Nothing. It was clean. But then I looked deeper. I looked at Southwest Fine Claims, the insurance company that was laundering the money. It was owned by a parent trust, an anonymized trust registered in Delaware. But I had the registration number. I ran it against the public database of city contracts. And there it was. The trust that owned Southwest Fine Claims was listed as a primary vendor for the Desert Transit Committee, the same committee that had tried to crucify me, and the authorizing signature at the bottom of the contract, Arden Vale. He did not just get the money. He was the money. He owned the entire chain. I had the motive. I had the money. But I was missing the anchor, the one thing that tied the money to the violence. My ghost, the girl in the trunk. I went to the secure phone in the compound. I used a number from a short list Nico had given me, marked only favors. A voice answered, crackling with static. "Tower." "This is Lena Hart," I said, my voice steady. "I'm calling on behalf of Nico Valente. I need the raw telemetry from the Desert Crown Tower from 3 months ago." I gave him the date and the exact time of the call. There was a long silence. "Valente," the man finally said. His voice was rough. "He kept my brother out of North Plateau. He said I'd know the call when it came." "This is the call," I said. "That's federal data. Kid, getting it is not just risky. It's treason." "I know." Another pause. "Check your encrypted cloud drive in 20 minutes. The line clicked dead. 19 minutes later, a file appeared. It was massive. Not the audio. It was the raw signal data, the life and death of the call. I ran the telemetry. I watched the signal pings as the car moved, then stopped, and then the termination. It was not a dropped call. It was a hard cut, a catastrophic failure. The phone was destroyed. I looked at the last recorded coordinates, the final, precise GPS ping from the phone, the exact location on Earth where that girl's call for help ended. My blood stopped. I pulled up the city grid. I pulled up the schematics for the Silver Pecan self-storage, the abandoned mall, the place where High Noon collected its cash, the place where we swapped the safe. I overlaid the GPS coordinates from the dead girl's phone. They matched. They matched to the millimeter. She had not been dumped in the desert. She had not been left in an alley. They had taken her to their base. They had killed her in the same place they kept their money. They had murdered her, and then they had gone back to counting their cash. I had it, the legal anchor, the one thing that connected the extortion, the money laundering, the political corruption, and the entire Mesa Ridge task group to a capital murder. Nico was in a cell, but he had just given me the key to burn their entire world to the ground. We were a 3-woman army, hidden in the humming heart of the Vesper Arts warehouse. Me, Nadia Flores, and Ray, who was running encrypted uploads and triple-checking the code. We were building a bomb. It was an open-source dossier, a public website we had built from scratch desert truths. It was a digital guillotine, and it was aimed at Arden Vale. It had everything: the memory card data from the High Noon safe, the 6 bundles of ledgers, the video surveillance of the cash drops. Nadia's financial tracing that linked Southwest Fine claims directly to Arden Vale's personal trust. And at the very top, the anchor, the raw, unfiltered telemetry from the Desert Crown Tower, the GPS coordinates of a murder, overlaid on a map of the Silver Pecan self-storage, and next to it, the audio file, the 3-month-old call, the whisper from the trunk. "We cannot just drop it," Nadia said, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "They'll call it a fabrication, a mafia-funded hack." "She's right," I said. "We need an echo chamber before they can spin it." We spent the next hour sending encrypted packages, not to the press, to the people above the press. We sent the complete file to the Sunland State Integrity Commission, a body with subpoena power over the WIB. We sent it to 3 separate retired federal judges, men and women known for their unimpeachable reputations, giving them the evidence under embargo for their review as concerned citizens. We were not just leaking a story. We were arming the arbiters of justice. The site was set. A massive countdown clock ticked down on our main screen. The dossier would go live, all at once, to the entire world at exactly 8 p.m. 7:30 p.m., the world went black. Not just the lights in the data center, the entire block. The hum of the servers died, the monitors snapped off. The only light was the red glow of a single emergency exit sign at the far end of the warehouse. "No," Ray whispered in the sudden, terrifying silence. "No, no, they cut the power. Lena, they cut the power to the whole district." "They know," Nadia breathed. "They knew where we were." I did not panic. I waited. 5 seconds. 6. A low, deep rumble started. It came from the floor below us, from the crate building workshop, a steady, powerful thrum, thrum, thrum. The lights flickered, the servers whined. Spinning back to life, the monitors lit up. The countdown clock reappeared 7:31 p.m. "The backup generators," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "Nico built this place to run off the grid." 7:50 p.m., 10 minutes to launch. My burner phone rang, not the one Nico gave me, the one I used to call Ray. I answered. "Ray, are you okay?" It was her, but her voice was distorted, thin, and full of terror. "Lena, I'm sorry. I went to get air. They grabbed me." My blood turned to ice. My knees buckled. "Ray, where are you? Who has you?" They said to tell you." Her voice broke in a sob. "Sister, don't publish. They'll kill me. Don't. The line went dead. I stared at the console, at the clock. 7:51 p.m. "Lena," Nadia asked, her hand on my arm. "What's wrong? What was that?" I could not breathe. He had her. Arden Vale. He had my sister. He had my only family. It was all for nothing. I had to stop. I had to trade. My hand went to the keyboard to kill the sequence. The other burner phone rang, the one Nico gave me. "The one linked to Jonah," I answered, my hand trembling. It was not Jonah. It was Nico. His voice was clear, not the sound of a jail call. He was on a smuggled line. Lena. Nico, they have her. I sobbed, the commander breaking, the sister taking over. They have Ray. Vale's men. They said they'll kill her if I publish. I have to stop. I have to... Publish it, he said. I froze. What? His voice was calm. It was not a request. It was not a cold calculation. It was the absolute, unshakable voice of the man who had sat with me in the storm. It was the sound of a pillar. He took her because he's desperate. He thinks he has leverage. He's wrong. You publish. You burn his kingdom to the ground. That is the only move. That is the only way you both get out. But, Nico... He will kill her anyway. Lena, men like Vale do not leave witnesses. Your only chance is to detonate. You are the one with the map. Use it now. The line went dead. I looked at the screen. 7:58 p.m. Nadia and Ray were watching me, their faces pale. Lena? I thought of Nico's voice. You burn his kingdom to the ground. I thought of the girl in the trunk. My hand was steady. My face was wet with tears, but my hand did not shake. 8 p.m. The clock hit 0. My finger pressed the enter key. It's live, I whispered. For a second, nothing. Then Nadia's laptop pinged. Then again and again, her blog, linked to the site, was getting traffic. Then her phone buzzed, and buzzed again. Oh my God, she whispered, holding it up. It's not just hits. It's everywhere. It's being shared. Thousands. Tens of thousands of times a minute. The bomb had gone off. The audio of the 911 call was the spark. The financial ledgers were the fuel. And the GPS coordinate of the murder was the detonation. By 8:15 p.m., the first local news station broke away from regular programming. By 8:30, the WIB announced an immediate emergency suspension of the entire Mesa Ridge task group, pending investigation. The dominoes were falling. While the city's digital world exploded, Arden Vale was running. He was not in his office. He was not at home. He was in a black sedan, speeding east toward the state line. But Nico's men were still loyal. Jonah Pike sat in the cab of a Vesper Arts box truck, parked sideways across a narrow pass in San Piedra Canyon. He was checking a flat tire. When Vale's sedan came screaming around the bend, it had nowhere to go. It skidded to a halt. Jonah stepped out of the truck, a heavy tire iron in his hand. He was not smiling. I was not watching the news. I was tracking the call. Ray's call. It was sloppy. They were in a hurry. They had not used a burner, they had used a spoofed line, but it had routed through a hard-line switch. At the Saguaro Business Center. The same building they had used before. They were arrogant. They were trapped. I did not call Jonah. I did not wait for the good cops. I grabbed my keys. Lena, where are you going? Nadia shouted. To get my sister. I drove myself. I broke every speed limit. I got to the Saguaro Center. The front was dark, but the back lot was open. A single cargo container, S-12, sat in the middle of the empty asphalt under a flickering spotlight. I heard her, a muffled sob. Ray? A man stepped out from the shadow of the container. He was big. He wore a gray suit. He held a metal baton. He sneered. She said you'd come. The boss is gone, but we still get paid. He lunged at me, raising the baton. My training kicked in. The years of listening to terror, of de-escalating violence, of controlling chaos with only my voice. On the ground, now, I screamed. The sheer, unexpected volume and authority in my voice made him stop. It was not a plea. It was a command. He flinched, a lifetime of obeying authority making him hesitate for one critical second. In that second, I did not attack. I pulled my phone. I hit the emergency strobe function, the one for signaling help. The brilliant, pulsing white light hit him directly in the eyes. He cried out, blinded, raising a hand. I did not run. I ran past him. He swung the baton wildly, hitting the side of the container with a deafening clang. A simple, heavy padlock was on the container door. Ray, stand back, I shouted. I ripped the bobby pin from my hair, the one I had used a lifetime ago. My fingers were shaking, but the lock was cheap. I jammed it in, twisted, raking the pins. Click! The lock fell. I tore the door open. Ray tumbled out, sobbing, falling into my arms. The guard, his eyes finally adjusting, roared and charged us. He never made it. The sound of sirens, not one, but a dozen, filled the night. Blue and red lights flooded the parking lot, but they were not WIB cars. They were Sandview PD, the good cops, the ones who had been sidelined by Mesa Ridge for years. The Desert Truth site had done its job. The public, seeing the GPS coordinate of a murder at Saguaro, had flooded the 911 lines. They had sent the cavalry. My burner phone rang, the Nico phone. I answered, my arm still tight around Ray. Lena, his voice. Not from a contraband line, it was clear. They let me go. The state attorney saw the dossier, the murder charge. It trumps everything. They let me go. I sagged against the container, relief washing over me in a wave so powerful it almost dropped me. Nico, I have Ray. I'm at Saguaro. A pause, a silence so loud it was deafening. Don't move, he said, his voice a low, protective growl. Don't move an inch. I'm coming. Across the city, a church bell began to chime, signaling the new day. It was midnight. The blue and red lights of the Sandview PD turned the Saguaro parking lot into a chaotic, flashing stage, but the sirens had not scared them all away. Just as the first officers were cuffing the man with the baton, a fleet of dark sedans screeched into the lot, cutting off the police cars. The doors flew open, not cops, gray suits, Mesa Ridge. And stepping out of the lead car, his face a mask of incandescent rage, was Councilman Arden Vale. Jonah must have only been able to hold him for so long. He was not running. He was here to scorch the earth. This is a secured federal investigation, Vale shouted, his voice echoing, his suit immaculate. This is WIB jurisdiction Sandview PD. Stand down or you will be charged with obstruction. He was a cornered animal, using his authority as a final, desperate shield. He pointed at me, his finger shaking. That woman is a flight risk, in league with organized crime. Sees her sees all of this. His men moved forward, a wall of gray, their hands on their weapons, the Sandview cops tensed. A standoff that could turn bloody in a second. That's far enough, guards, Councilman. The voice cut through the air, amplified by a bullhorn. It was not Nico. A woman in a sharp suit stepped out of an unmarked car I had not even seen arrive. Arden Vale, you have no authority here. The Western Intercity Bureau has been temporarily disbanded, pending a full investigation by the Sunland State Integrity Commission. I am Investigator Thorne. Search warrants were read. The world became a blur of legal terms and flashing lights. Vale's men were ordered to stand down, their badges suddenly worthless. Vale looked around, his eyes wild, darting from the cops to the Integrity Commission, to me. He was trapped. The entire empire of paper and fear he had built was collapsing around him in real time. And then his eyes landed on me. He saw me, standing by the container, Ray shivering behind me. He saw the source of his ruin. He moved. He was faster than I thought a man in a $1,000 suit could be. He lunged at me, grabbing me by the hair, yanking me forward. A small silver object flashed in his hand, a box cutter. He snapped the blade out and pressed the cold, flat side of it against my throat. "Everybody back!" he screamed, his voice no longer the smooth politician's, but a raw, animal shriek. "Back off or I will cut her from ear to ear." The parking lot froze. The cops, the feds, everyone. They had me. He had me. "Nico!" I screamed, a raw, terrified sound. "I'm right here, Lena." I saw him. He was walking out of the darkness from the edge of the lot, his hands held high and open, palms out. He was not in a suit. He was in the same dark t-shirt and slacks he'd been wearing when he was arrested. He looked like he had just walked out of a holding cell. He probably had. He stopped, a safe 20 yards away, the flashing lights painting his face red and blue. He ignored Vale. He only looked at me. "Let her go, Vale," Nico said, his voice calm, reasonable, as if he were negotiating a logistics contract. "You're done. The money is gone. The political cover is gone. You are holding a 911 dispatcher. All this does is add aggravated assault and kidnapping to your murder charge." "Shut up!" Vale shrieked, pressing the blade harder. I felt the sharp edge bite, a tiny line of fire. "You did this, both of you." "You're right," Nico said, taking one slow step closer. "We did. But this is over. You have only one choice left. You get to choose how you fall." Vale was trembling, his composure gone. He was just a terrified man with a small knife. I was a dispatcher. I knew how to read panic. He was not thinking. He was reacting. I looked at Nico, and he was still watching me. His eyes locked on mine. Ignoring the blade at my throat, I moved my eyes. Just a fraction. I looked left, toward the container, then back at Nico. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He had read the signal. "Ray!" I screamed, using all my command voice. "Now the button!" Inside the container, Ray, who was still hiding, understood. She slammed her hand against the red emergency panic button on the container's inner wall. A deafening, high-pitched alarm, louder than any siren, blasted through the lot. "E-E-E." Vale flinched. His body reacted to the sudden, piercing noise, his head jerking toward the sound. It was the only opening I would get. I did not try to run. I slammed my head back, hitting him square in the nose. I felt cartilage crunch. He howled, his grip loosening. I grabbed his wrist, the one with the knife, and I twisted, dropping all my weight, just as I had been taught in a long-forgotten self-defense class. The blade went skittering across the asphalt. Vale raised his hand to his broken, bleeding nose. Before he could even recover, a black shape shot past me. Jonah Pike. He hit Vale with a full-body tackle, driving him into the pavement. The sound of the councilman's head hitting the ground was a sickening, final thud. Jonah put a knee on his chest, cuffed him, and hauled him to his feet, handing the dazed, bleeding politician to a stunned Sandview PD officer. The game was over. The rest of the Mesa Ridge agents, their leader defeated, put their hands up. The chain of command was broken, the spell was shattered. High Noon Civic Services and Southwest Fine Claims would be nothing but empty, seized offices by morning. As the officers led Vale away, something new happened, a noise. It was not a siren, it was clapping. People were coming out of the shadows, dozens of them. Residents from the nearby apartments, small business owners, the people who had been bled dry by these security fees for years. They had been watching. They had been listening to the scanners. They saw the king of their fear, Arden Vale, led away in cuffs. And then officers opened the other containers in the lot, the ones Mesa Ridge had been using for storage. People were inside, the victims of their extortion, the ones who had not paid, held in a dark, cold box. Warm blankets and water were passed out. The crowd did not just clap, they cheered. I was standing alone in the middle of it all, shaking, the adrenaline finally leaving me. And then he was there. Nico walked through the chaos, through the cops and the victims and the flashing lights, as if none of it existed. He stopped in front of me. He looked at the thin, red line on my throat. His face hardened, but he said nothing. He just pulled me to him. He wrapped his arms around me, one hand cradling the back of my head, and he held me. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in the scent of him, the solid, real, steady beat of his heart under my ear. He pulled back, just enough to look at me. This kiss was not the hesitant question of the sandstorm. It was not the fiery, desperate claiming in the study. It was a seal. It was a vow. It was firm and deep, and it tasted of safety. He pressed his forehead to mine, our breath mingling in the cold midnight air. "From the moment I read that note," he whispered, his voice rough, "for me alone, you were mine to keep safe. I was just late." The Sunland State Integrity Commission prosecuted Arden Vale with the ledgers, the telemetry, and the testimony of 24 victims. It was the fastest conviction in the state's history. Mesa Ridge was dissolved. The WIB was cleaned out from the top down. Ray, it turned out, had been snapping photos on her phone from inside the container. They were blurry, chaotic, and brilliant. Nadia Flores published them, and they won a local photojournalism award when Ray was accepted into the Sandview Photojournalism Center. The tuition was anonymously paid in full. I never asked. I just knew. I went back to 911. I could not be a dispatcher anymore. I had crossed a line, but they gave me a new job. I became the head trainer for crisis response. I taught new dispatchers how to hear the silences, how to read the fear, how to be the commander on the line, and on my own time. I started a nonprofit funded by an anonymous grant from the Vesper Arts Foundation, a hotline for victims of official extortion. Nico kept his word. He did not touch civilians. He found that the power he wielded through data, through precision, was cleaner and more effective than violence. He did not become a good man, but he became a better one. We went back to Cedar Ridge Overlook. It was months later. The air was clear, and the sun was just beginning to touch the mountains, painting the sky in pale gold and rose. The high desert wind was just a breeze. I turned to him. I did not say anything. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was white, blank. I pressed it into his hand. He looked at me, a question in his dark eyes. "That first note," I said, my voice quiet, "it was a request for help. This one is just to say thank you. Thank you for reading me, right in that moment." He smiled, a real smile. He tucked the blank paper into his coat pocket, as if it were the most valuable thing he owned. He pulled me close, and as the sun rose over the city, we had, in our own way, saved. He kissed me. We were on the highest point, safe, and finally, choosing our own dawn. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to connect with you, so please drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And to help this story reach even more listeners, please support us by hitting that hype button. We appreciate you being here.